All right. Shalom, family. It's your brother Kanaiba coming at you once again with this video titled Wrestlemania 41. The Last Time Is Now, Part 4. Okay. So this is going to be the fourth and final part to this video series dealing with this year's WrestleMania. Now, the first three parts pretty much dealt with what was going on the left-hand side, okay, esoterically, right? So, of course, the fourth and final part, I saved the best for last. We're going to deal with this from more of a biblical vantage point and what the underlining meaning or message is biblically in part 4. Okay, so if you made it this far, thank you and congratulations. But we're really going to get into it in part 4. Okay, I'm really excited about this particular video, and what you're going to see is in part 4, the WWE, like I said, there is a heavy biblical underline in this particular WrestleMania, okay? And some of this biblical underlining, the WWE, and this is just my critique, but I believe they are pretty much making a mockery of the biblical narrative, okay? But yeah. We're going to get into it. We're going to expose a lot. We're actually going to get into the scriptures, which I'm very excited about. And we're going to bring this video series to a close. Okay? Now, I know I said in the beginning of this video series that I wanted to upload these videos before WrestleMania 41 started. And which for the most part I did. Parts 1 through 3 I uploaded before WrestleMania started. Right? But part 4, I didn't. And I'm actually glad that I didn't. Because had I uploaded part 4 before WrestleMania started, part 4 would have been premature. I would have missed a lot. Okay? What I'm coming to find out is, when you deal with the biblical aspect of WrestleMania, a lot of times the biblical aspect, most of it actually happens during WrestleMania, not before. Okay, most of the information comes out during WrestleMania and sometimes even afterwards. Okay, so I'm actually glad that I waited for part 4 to this point, because now I pretty much have all the information I need, okay, to actually put this video out from more of a biblical perspective. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so opening up, we're gonna start with night 1 of WrestleMania. Okay. Now, I know I said that we were gonna pick back up with the video that of John Cena that I left off with in part 3. But we're gonna get back to that video, but a little later on in part 4. Okay, I actually have more information that I have to put out before that. Okay, that's why again, a wise man once said when doing these types of videos, he said, you don't want to be first, you want to be correct. Okay, so we're gonna do this orderly. Okay, so we're gonna deal with night 1, because night 1, as we see in this particular slide, there's a biblical narrative, right? It says WrestleMania 41, night 1. Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and CM Punk are a part of an underlining biblical narrative. Okay, make no mistake about it. They are. Okay, and we're about to get into that right now. But before we do, look at this promotional poster for night 1. Okay, it's still playing into the fire and ice ritual, the Saturnian ritual. Okay, as you see to the far left, you have Seth Rollins, and basically his side is based in fire. If you look at the bottom left corner, you have the fire with basically this Egyptian sculpture, which is quite curious. Everything is pretty much orange. Then moving closer to the right, in the middle, Roman Reigns, he's in red. Then moving further right, CM Punk, he's blue. Everything is blue. That's the fire and ice ritual that they're doing here with all 3 men. Okay, but make no mistake, there is a heavy biblical narrative behind this too. Now, a lot of you may be thinking, well, how do you mean, Kanaiba? What's the biblical narrative? Well, let's deal with the obvious first. Okay, let's look at Mr. Roman Reigns. Okay, now this is probably the most obvious. Mr. Roman Reigns represents the Roman Empire. Okay, that's the role that he's playing in this particular storyline, this narrative, this underlining biblical narrative that the WWE is pushing. Okay, he represents the Roman Empire. Okay, so now what role then does Seth Rollins and CM Punk play? Well, Seth Rollins and CM Punk, they both play a Messiah figure in this particular biblical narrative. They're playing the role of whom the world knows as Jesus Christ. That's the narrative that they're playing, and I'm going to prove it. Okay? So, let's actually move forward. Let me prove what I'm saying. Okay? So, let's start with Mr. Seth Rollins. Okay? Now, here's some information on Mr. Seth Rollins, and it says, yes, Seth Rollins was known as the Monday Night Messiah during his time on WWE Raw. Allow me to repeat that part. Yes, Seth Rollins was known as the Monday Night Messiah during his time on WWE Raw. Let's move forward. He also adopted the nickname the SmackDown Savior after being drafted to the SmackDown brand. So, as we see, what I'm saying is not far-fetched. Seth Rollins has always been like a Messiah figure in the WWE. These are the nicknames that he adopted when he was on both Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown. Okay, and not to digress too much, but even when you deal with both brands, when you deal with Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown, you're dealing with a fire and ice dynamic. Okay, Monday Night Raw is known as what? The red brand. Friday Night SmackDown is known as what? The blue brand. The red and blue, fire and ice. Okay, so now, and still, when you look at Seth Rollins, I forgot this part. When you look at Seth Rollins, that's not even his real name. His real name, go figure, is Kobe Lopez. Okay, now granted, the way he spells his first name, Kobe, is different from the basketball player Kobe Bryant. He spells his, I believe, Koby. But yet and still, his first name is still Kobe, which is quite telling. Very curious. Okay, because we know Kobe Bryant, he was quote unquote sacrificed. They 33'd him. Okay, and now you have Mr. Seth Rollins, also playing a quote-unquote Messiah figure here. Okay? And remember, Mr. Kobe Bryant, they 33'd him at what? At the age of 41. This is WrestleMania 41, correct? So this is almost like a death and resurrection thing that they're trying to play into. Because when you look at Seth Rollins, when you look at his entrance at WrestleMania 41, when he first entered, he had on all black with a flamethrower. Because you know, within his theme song, it's what? Burn it down. Okay, and we know what? That biblically, the prophecy is that the modern day Roman Empire, which is America, is going to be burned down. Okay, so Seth Rollins came out in all black at first, and then when he walked down the ramp, he was wearing all white. Again, it's dealing with duality, but we know that white represents what? Purity. He was playing a Messiah figure. That's why he had to wear all white for the majority of the match. Okay. But with that, I know there was a lot. Let's move forward to Mr. CM Punk. Let's take a look at him. All right. So here's some information on Mr. CM Punk, and it reads, it says, yes, CM Punk's Straight Edge Society, SES, gimmick in WWE was deliberately designed to portray him as a Messiah figure. Allow me to repeat that part. Yes, CM Punk's Straight Edge Society gimmick in WWE was deliberately designed to portray him as a Messiah figure. So again, what I'm saying is not far-fetched. Is your brother Kaniba reaching? I'm not. Okay, I told you there is a deep biblical narrative. Roman Reigns is playing the role of the Roman Empire, and Seth Rollins and CM Punk are both playing Messiah figures. Okay, so it goes on to say he openly acknowledged this, stating he wanted to create a character that resembled Jesus Christ. Allow me to repeat that part. He openly acknowledged this, stating he wanted to create a character that resembled Jesus Christ with long hair, beard, and a focus on saving others. Okay, it says he even drew inspiration from televangelists and used the term purifying to describe how he recruited members. Okay, and yes, he did this. We're going to take a look in a minute here. But yes, CM Punk played a Messiah figure. Okay, and when you look at Seth Rollins and CM Punk, especially back in the day when CM Punk actually had long hair, both of those men, they actually kind of look alike. CM Punk and Seth Rollins, they actually favor each other. Okay, why? Because they both, when you look at an actual depiction of this person, they both look like Caesar Borgia. The fake image of Jesus Christ. They look like Caesar Borgia, both of them. Like I said, especially when CM Punk had long hair. Okay, but then there's a reason for that. They fit the mold. They both are playing Messiah figures, especially in this WrestleMania 41. Okay, so now with that, let's move forward. And this is CM Punk during that Straight Edge Society era. Okay, if you look to the left, the young lady to the left, I forget her name. Her name escapes me. But if you look at her shirt, course, it has the SES, okay, Straight Edge Society, right? But I want you to look at her head. See that? She's bald, right? Now, we just read that CM Punk, he wanted to basically be a messiah figure during this Straight Edge Society era, right? Now, look at him on the screen. He looks like Caesar Borgia, okay? And he looks like Seth Rollins. Okay, because in this WrestleMania 41, they're pretty much playing the same figure. They're playing a false Jesus Christ. Okay. But I want to put more focus on the young lady to the left. Now, notice she's bald. And remember, we just read in that information in the last slide that CM Punk drew from televangelist, and he had this gimmick where he called it purifying when he recruited members into the Straight Edge Society. He called that recruitment, he called it purifying. Okay, now how would he purify new members? Well, look at the young lady to the left. She's bald. What he would do is he would shave the head of new members. Okay. And you can actually go on YouTube, and there's a segment where this young lady right here, he shaved her head on live television during an episode of, I believe it was Raw, if I'm not mistaken. But yes, he did this. That's how he recruited new members. They would have to shave their heads bald. Okay. And of course, there's a reason for that. Okay, which we're going to get into in a minute, because that's actually biblical. Okay. But before we get into that, I want to take a closer look at CM Punk's shirt during this particular era. All right, so let's go to the next slide. So here is a closer look of CM Punk's shirt from that Straight Edge Society era. And as you can see, if you look at the middle of the logo, what is that? It's an eagle. Okay. It's an eagle with an X through it, which is quite curious. Okay. Usually when something has an X through it, it's a sign that it's about to be deleted. Right? But it's very interesting that during the time where CM Punk was this quote-unquote messiah figure, he was wearing a shirt with an eagle on it. Okay, which is very, very telling. Okay. But now what I actually want to do, I want to get back to talking about the shaving of the head, which Mr. CM Punk was doing during this time as a sign of purifying his the people that he recruited. Okay, so he said he wanted to shave their heads as a sign of purification for the people that he recruits. Now, I made a statement that that's actually biblical. Okay, in certain instances, that's actually biblical. Okay, so allow me to actually explain that. Let's go to the scriptures real quick. Okay, because remember, I told you this particular WrestleMania has a deep biblical connotation to it. Okay, so let's go to the scriptures. Now watch this. So when you go to the book of Deuteronomy chapter 21, we have within our law, within Torah, it talks about how we are to deal with a woman that's a concubine. Okay. Now, I'm going to brief you through this process. So the scriptures talk about when the Israelite men go to war, we basically win over that particular nation we go to war with. The people of that nation that's left alive, we take them captives as slaves. And then once we get to this point in the scriptures, verse 11, it says, and seest among the captives, meaning the people that we basically overtook in war, and seest among the captives a beautiful woman, and hast a desire unto her, that thou wouldest have her to thy wife. Okay, so if you see among the captives of that nation that we just conquered in war, if we see a beautiful woman and we have a desire for to make her our wife, okay, or in this case, which would be a concubine, which is a lesser wife, okay. Not to digress too much, but when you look at the in antiquity, when you look at the social hierarchy, the social status of a concubine is much higher than that of a regular common slave. Okay, her social status is much higher than that, but her social status is actually much lower than that of an actual Israelite wife. Okay, so she's kind of right there in between. Okay, that's what a concubine is, right? For example, real quick, when you look at the movie Django, okay, when Django and Dr. Schultz, when they first met the character of Calvin, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, they were playing pool at the pool table or whatever. There was a black woman that was in the room. Okay, she was dressed real fancy or whatever. That's an example of a concubine. Okay, you could tell that she had a social status that was much higher than the other quote unquote slaves, but she still wasn't on the level of Calvin and the rest of the Caucasians. Okay, she was actually the one that at the end of the movie, after the funeral, when Jamie Foxx told the two women, say goodbye to Miss Laura before he blew her away, she was the smaller woman that ran out the house. Okay, that was Calvin's concubine. Okay, just to give you an example, right? So now let's move on to the next verse. Verse 12, and it reads, it says, then thou shalt bring her home to thine house, and she shall shave her head and pare her nails. So what this is like a point of purification. When you actually continue reading this is the start of it. Okay, but notice it says she had to shave her head. Now we know, according to the Apostle Paul, the woman's hair is her glory. Okay, but she has to shave her head. This is a point of purification. She's putting off the ways of her own people, which 9 times out of 10 were pagan. And then this is how she has to become your wife. She has to now follow your ways and follow Torah. Okay, the laws of your God, of our God, the Most High God of Israel. Okay, this is a point of purification. But within that, she had to shave her head. So what CM Punk was doing, believe it or not, was actually to an extent biblical. Okay, now let's move on to another instance where this is a point of purification. Let's deal with the Nazirite vow. Okay, the vow of a Nazirite. What does a Nazirite have to do at the end of his vow? Okay, let's take a look. So this is going to be Numbers chapter 6 and verse 18. And it reads, it says, and the Nazirite shall shave the head of his separation at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and shall take the hair of the head of his separation and put it in the fire, which is under the sacrifice of the peace offerings. So this is towards the end of the vow of a Nazirite. Okay, this is what he has to do. Okay, it says he had to shave the head of his separation. Okay, because when you take a Nazirite vow, you are quote unquote set apart. Okay, you're deemed holy. Now we know the whole nation of Israel as a whole is deemed holy or set apart from all other nations. Okay, but in the nation of Israel, when a person takes the vow of a Nazirite, they're set apart from their own people. Okay, they're under this vow, right? But at the end of this vow, as we see here, the Nazirite has to shave their head and actually burn the hair that was on their head, because during the vow of a Nazirite, you could not cut your hair. Okay, a razor could not come to your scalp. You could not cut your hair. You could not cut your hair at all. Okay, just look at the story of Samson. He was a Nazirite. He was under the vow of a Nazirite from birth. Okay, to give you another example of a movie that kind of portrayed that, if any of you brothers or sisters ever seen The Book of Eli with Denzel Washington, what happened at the end of that movie? At the end of that movie, when they got to their destination, of course, when he was basically quoting the Bible as the man was writing scriptures down. Notice he had on an all white robe, and he had shaved his head. Okay, that was supposed to be symbolic of him finishing the vow of a Nazirite. Okay, that was a point of purification. That's why they had him wear all white. Okay, so I said all that and gave these examples to show you that what CM Punk was doing, again, there's a biblical undertone to it. Okay, and he is indeed playing a Messiah figure. Okay, so now that we've dealt with that, there's still one character left, one person left in this particular storyline that we have not talked about. Who am I referring to? I'm referring to Mr. Paul Heyman. Okay, what role is Mr. Paul Heyman playing in this particular storyline from a biblical perspective? What role is Paul Heyman playing? Well, his role is probably just as obvious as the role that Roman Reigns is playing. Okay, let's look at the next slide and let's see the role that Paul Heyman is playing. All right, and here we have it. It says Paul Heyman is playing the role of the Apostle Paul, pre and post conversion, connected to all three men. Okay, this is going to take some explanation. So first, let's deal with how he's connected to Mr. Roman Reigns, of course, from this biblical undertone. Okay, now we know, of course, Paul Heyman was just here recently Mr. Roman Reigns' wise man, as far as the WWE's storyline narrative is. Okay, he was his wise man. Okay, so now let's look at the next slide and let's get some information about the Apostle Paul. Okay, let's take a look. So here's some information about the Apostle Paul, and it reads, it says, yes, the Apostle Paul was a Roman citizen. Allow me to repeat that part. Yes, the Apostle Paul was a Roman citizen. Now, when you watch the WWE, Mr. Roman Reigns, he has this particular gimmick where they talk about the island of relevancy. Okay, in which up until this point, Paul Heyman was a part of that island of relevancy, basically a citizen. Right? But anyway, let's continue. It says, according to the book of Acts, Paul claims to have been born a Roman citizen. Now watch closely. This is further substantiated by his use of his citizenship to his advantage, such as when he appeals to the emperor and when he uses his status to avoid flogging. So the Apostle Paul would use his Roman citizenship to his advantage, even to appeal to the emperor. Now, from a WWE standpoint, this sounds a lot like Paul Heyman. using his position with Roman Reigns to his advantage. Or, in other words, his Roman citizenship to his advantage up until this point. Okay, that's the biblical connection, the biblical undertone that they're telling and within this WrestleMania. Okay, but all right, let me not get ahead of myself. Let's go ahead and let's move forward, and let's deal with how he connects with Mr. CM Punk. Okay, now remember I told you that Paul Heyman represents the Apostle Paul both pre and post conversion. Pre-conversion would be when he was still being referred to as Saul. Okay, now we know Paul Heyman in this storyline, he betrayed both Roman Reigns and CM Punk. Okay, so we get it from a Roman Reigns standpoint. The Apostle Paul was against the Roman Empire. Even though he had citizenship, he was still against the Roman Empire. Right? Now, Paul Heyman betrays CM Punk, who CM Punk is playing a Messiah figure. Okay, so let's explain that. This is pre-conversion. What was going on with Paul and the actual Messiah before he actually converted? Let's go to the scriptures. This is Acts chapter 9 and verse 3. And it reads, it says, and as he journeyed, this is talking about Paul when he was still being referred to as Saul. It says, and as he journeyed, he came near Damascus. And suddenly there shined round about him a light from heaven. So this is talking about Paul and his road to Damascus. Okay, his journey to Damascus, right? What basically happened, this is we getting to the point where he encounters the Messiah, Yahushua. This bright light, as we see here, shines, and he starts hearing the voice of Yahushua. And of course, Paul becomes blind for, I believe, 3 days, if I'm not mistaken. And during those 3 days, he had to fast or whatever. And then after those 3 days, of course, it was as if scales fell from his eyes and he could see again. And at that point, he converted. Okay, but what was going on with him? Why did this incident have to happen? Let's look at the next verse. This is verse 4, and it reads, it says, and he fell to the earth and heard a voice saying unto him, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? So Paul, pre-conversion, when he was still being referred to as Saul, we see what he was doing. He was persecuting the Mashiach, the Messiah. Okay, he was persecuting him. Now, how was he accomplishing this? He was accomplishing this by actually persecuting the Israelite followers of the Messiah, of the Mashiach, whom the world knows as Jesus Christ, right? So persecuting them and actually being behind them, being put to death for following the Messiah. He in turn was actually persecuting Yahushua, Jesus Christ, right? So now we get the narrative. Okay, this is why I said Paul Heyman represents the Apostle Paul, both pre and post conversion. Okay, CM Punk represents the Messiah pre-conversion. Okay, how Paul was dealing with the Messiah before he converted. This is why Paul Heyman had to betray CM Punk, because CM Punk was playing a Messiah figure just before the Apostle Paul converted. That's the biblical narrative right there. And of course, he also betrayed Roman Reigns. Okay, and we know the Apostle Paul, even though he had a Roman citizenship, he was still against the Roman Empire. Okay, so now that we have that, remember, I told you, Paul Heyman represents the Apostle Paul, both pre and post conversion. So after this particular instance that we're reading about Paul's road to Damascus, after that, he converted and actually became a follower of the Messiah, of the Mashiach, right? This is where Seth Rollins comes in. Seth Rollins represents the Messiah, Paul's post-conversion. Because how did that match end? That match ended with Paul Heyman betraying CM Punk and Roman Reigns and actually being in league with Seth Rollins. So now it makes sense, the biblical undertone of this story. Both men, Seth Rollins and CM Punk, are playing Messiah figures, just at two different points in time, as far as Paul is concerned. They represent two different points in Paul's life when you look at this from a biblical standpoint. Okay, and of course, Roman Reigns, which is obvious, simply represents the Roman Empire. Okay, listen, I told y'all, the WWE, the WWE is something else, because this is diabolical. But I told y'all, they are truly, really making a mockery of this particular biblical story. Okay, that's why this had to happen during so-called Easter weekend. Okay, so now that we've dealt with the main event of night 1 of WrestleMania 41, now we can get into night 2 of WrestleMania 41. Okay, which of course was April the 20th. Okay, so with that, let's get into night 2's main event. All right, so here's the next slide, starting to the left, and it reads: John Cena and Cody Rhodes will main event WrestleMania 41 this Sunday, April 20th, in which they did. John Cena is a 16-time world champion going for his 17th world championship. Now, let's see how this all lines up. Yes, Easter Sunday in 2025 falls on April 20th, which is WrestleMania 41, same day, which is indeed the 17th Sunday of the year. Reading on. Yes, April 20th, 2025 falls within calendar week 16 in the United States. Specifically, April 20th will be the last day of calendar week 16. So, John Cena right now is a 16-time world champion, or at the time he was a 16-time world champion going for his 17th world championship. That particular day, April 20th, was the 16th week of the year and the 17th Sunday of the year. Do you not see the connection? It's like the numbers lined up for Mr. John Cena it's just too perfect. Okay, everything was lined up for him to win. Okay, and it had to happen on quote unquote Easter Sunday, because this is supposed to have an underlining biblical undertone to it, in which we know in reality Easter has nothing to do with the Bible. It's pagan. Okay, but most people still believe Easter is biblical. So that's why this particular match had to happen on April 20th. The numbers just line up too perfectly, and there's a biblical undertone to this. Okay, let me further prove that point. Let's move forward. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually watch the video of John Cena that I was referring to earlier. The same video that we ended part 3 with. Okay, let's go to this video and let's see what Mr. John Cena actually said last week's Friday, right before that Friday before WrestleMania. Okay, let's take a look.
Sunday is the last time I will ever compete in a WrestleMania ring. No one has ever had the courage to end their career the way I have. And there is nothing you could possibly do to prepare to face a man who knows he's going to die.
Okay, so John Cena just made a statement. Okay, he made this statement on April 18th, 2025 on SmackDown, right? About knowing he's going to die. Okay, he made this statement on Friday Night SmackDown, April 18th, 2025. John Cena made this statement on Good Friday about knowing he's going to die. Right? What you have to understand, John Cena, just like Mr. CM Punk and Mr. Seth Rollins, is also playing a Messiah figure in this particular narrative. Okay? And this night 2 main event of WrestleMania 41. Okay, that's why he had to make that particular statement about knowing he's going to die. He had to make that statement on Good Friday. Because we know, according to the narrative of Christianity, they say the Mashiach died on Good Friday. That's why he had to make that statement about knowing he's going to die on Good Friday. Because John Cena, again, this is mockery that the WWE is doing, but it's still also ritualistic. But John Cena is playing a Messiah figure. Okay, let's continue. Let's further prove the point. Let's move forward. So take a look at this. As you see here, there's a movie that came out on Good Friday. Okay, the movie Sinners is released on Good Friday, the same day John Cena made the statement about him dying. Okay, now again, this is the biblical narrative. I told you, John Cena, just like Seth Rollins and CM Punk, he is playing a Messiah figure. Okay, again, he made that statement about dying on Good Friday, and that same day on Good Friday, a movie comes out starring Mr. Michael B. Jordan, titled Sinners. Okay, what is the biblical story? Yahweh Shai, whom the world knows as Jesus Christ, he died for sinners. Okay, he died for the sinners of his people, the Israelites. Okay, do you not see the narrative? All of this is connected. This movie had to come out on the same day, Sinners. It came out on Good Friday because it's all tied to a biblical narrative. Okay, and even if you want to look at it from the left-handed side, okay, look at the promotional poster for Sinners. Okay, in this particular movie, Mr. Michael B. Jordan plays a twin. plays himself double. And when you look at this promotional poster, look at the color scheme. It's still dealing with the Saturnian principles of fire and ice. Okay, red and blue, fire and ice. That's why one twin is red, the other one is blue. This is dealing with fire and ice. Okay, and not to mention, this is why WrestleMania 41 is being held in Las Vegas. Okay, what is the nickname for Las Vegas? Sin City. Okay, all of it, again, I told you there's a biblical undertone to this WrestleMania, okay? And this just further proves it with this movie with Michael B. Jordan titled Sinners, where he's playing a twin. Okay? Now, to further prove that this movie ties into the WrestleMania narrative, it actually ties into it on the left-hand side too. Okay, that's why he's playing a twin in this movie. Did we not already talk about twins in this WrestleMania narrative? The Metcalf twins. Okay, which one of them was stabbed by another young man named Carmelo Anthony. All of this plays into the narrative. All three boys were 17 years old. And the fact that one of them was named Carmelo Anthony plays a significant role. Let's prove that. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So let's take a look at this. So when you simply type in Carmelo Anthony, the name of the actual basketball player, when you type in Carmelo Anthony WWE in the search engine on Google Images, this is what comes up. John Cena with Carmelo Anthony wearing the number 33. Okay, that's all you have to do is simply type in Carmelo Anthony WWE. You don't even have to type in John Cena's name. This is the image that comes up. Okay, so again, we see the link between Carmelo Anthony and this whole WWE narrative. You had the teenager Carmelo Anthony, which stabbed one of the Metcalf twins. All three young men of which were 17 years old. Carmelo Anthony, the same name as the basketball player Carmelo Anthony, whom, when you type his name in the Google search engine, just type in Carmelo Anthony WWE, John Cena pops up with Carmelo Anthony wearing the number 33. That number 33 represents sacrifice. And you mean to tell me that this isn't linked? Okay, that number 33 represents sacrifice, and that's because that's a biblical narrative. That's where the left-hand side gets it from. Why? Because the Mashiach, the Messiah, Yahweh Shai, whom the world knows as Jesus Christ, he died on the cross as a sacrifice for the nation of Israel at the age of 33 years old. Okay, again, this is why I say John Cena is playing a Messiah figure in this WWE storyline and this biblical undertone. Okay, let's actually go to the scriptures real quick and let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at what the Bible says about Yahweh Shai dying. Watch this. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 1 and verse 21. And it reads, it says, "And she shall bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Jesus," or Yahweh Shai, "for he shall save his people from their sins." Okay, so the Mashiach, the Messiah, Yahushua, Jesus Christ, the angel Gabriel speaking to his father Joseph is telling Joseph that he, the Mashiach, will save his people. His people are the children of Israel. He shall save his people from their sins. How would he do that? By sacrificing himself on the cross. He died as a sacrifice. Okay? He died as a sacrifice for sinners, the sinners of his people. That's why the movie Sinners had to come out on quote unquote Good Friday. The same day that John Cena made that statement about him knowing that he's about to die. Because John Cena is playing a Messiah figure in this whole narrative of WrestleMania 41. All right. So with that, let's move forward to the next slide. Now, would you look at this? John Cena and Jesus Christ. John Cena and Jesus Christ have the same initials, JC. John Cena, Jesus Christ. Now, do you think that's a coincidence? You think the WWE didn't notice that this isn't a part of the narrative? What are the odds? Okay, John Cena is actually playing the role of quote unquote Jesus Christ. He's playing a Messiah figure. They have the same initials, JC. Okay, now some of you may be saying, oh, Kaniba, you're reaching. They're not paying attention to people's names that closely. They're not paying attention to the name John Cena that closely. Okay. You should know I always got more. we gonna deal with John Cena's name, okay? But if I'm actually reaching and they're not paying attention to the name John Cena and how it's linked to Jesus Christ, it's the same initials. If they're not paying attention to both of those names and trying to link them, please explain this next slide to me. Let's take a look here. Now, would you look at that? The names John and Jesus are the reverse of one another in gematria, still dealing with duality. See that? To the right, you have the gematria calculators for both John and Jesus. John equals 47, Jesus equals 74. That's dealing with duality. That's just the reverse of each other. 47 and 74, they basically are mirroring one another. It's duality. Okay, because John Cena is playing a Messiah figure, but it's basically like an anti-Messiah. It's what he's playing. That's why he had to turn heel at the end of his career. It's dealing with duality, fire and ice. Okay, but looking at this from the biblical narrative, that's why John equals 47, Jesus equals 74. It's basically the same number, just reversed. All right. So with that, let's move forward. Now, looking at the two gentlemen I have on the screen, which is Mr. John Cena and Mr. Paul Heyman. Now, why do I have them on the screen? Why these two men? Okay. Some of you may be wondering, okay, how does these two tie into one another in WrestleMania 41? Well, these two men basically did the same thing in this WrestleMania storyline at WrestleMania. Both of them are the objects of betrayal. Just think about it. When you look at this whole storyline, Mr. Paul Heyman betrayed CM Punk and Roman Reigns, correct? John Cena betrayed Cody Rhodes at the Elimination Chamber. He betrayed Cody Rhodes and basically the whole WWE universe. He did that by turning heel. Okay, and selling out to The Rock. Okay. But yeah, both of these men represent betrayal in this whole storyline. Okay, in this whole WrestleMania 41 storyline, they represent betrayal. Why is this important? Why is linking them so important? Let's look at the next slide and let's find out, shall we? And here we have it. John Cena and Paul Heyman. When you take the first name of both men, I spelled both wrong, but it's okay. When you take the first name of both men, John Cena and Paul Heyman, and put them together, you get John Paul, which are the names of two past popes. Okay, John Paul. Now we I told you this is crazy. So taking the first name of both of these men, and I put both of these men together because they both represent the same thing, or they both did the same thing in this WrestleMania. They are a symbol of betrayal. Okay, John Cena and Paul Heyman. You take both of their first names, put them together, you get John Paul. John Paul is the name of two past popes. And these two past popes, when you look at their life, it was esoteric. Well, let's take a look. Let's have some fun here. Let's look at Pope John Paul I and Pope John Paul II. And let's see if the WWE is trying to give us a subliminal message. Is this predictive programming? Let's see. Let's move forward. So here's information about Pope John Paul I, and it reads, I'm going to look at the overview. It says Pope John Paul I was head of the Catholic Church and sovereign of Vatican City from August 26, 1978 until his death 33 days later. It says his reign is among the shortest in papal history. We're going to stop right there. This man became Pope, head of the Catholic Church, August 26, 1978. And he died 33 days later. They gave him the old 33. They got him out of there. This was indeed a sacrifice. Okay, I have very little doubt in my mind. The fact that he died 33 days after becoming Pope, that is insane. So we have the Pope John Paul I linked to the number 33. Okay, let's look at Pope John Paul II and let's see what's going on with him. Let's move forward. So here's some information about Pope John Paul II, and it reads, let's deal with the overview. It says Pope John Paul II was head of the Catholic Church and sovereign of the Vatican City State from 1978 until his death in 2005. Let's pause right there. When in 2005 did he die? It says he died April 2nd, 2005. Right? What is so special about that date, April 2nd, 2005? Let's look at the next slide. Let's refresh your memory. Okay, take a look at this. April 2nd to April 19th, the first day of WrestleMania. That's a 17-day duration. Remember that? So we have both Pope John Paul I is linked to the number 33. Pope John Paul II is linked to April 2nd, which is 17 days from WrestleMania. April 2nd, the same day that the Metcalf twin was stabbed and killed. Okay, and he was a twin, right? We know the Pope plays the role of Janus. He's proverbially Janus, the so-called god of doorways. And we know that Janus represents duality, the twin effect. This is why when you look at a statue of Janus, you have the face of him facing forward as an old man representing the future, and the face of him looking backwards as a young man representing the past. That's duality. Okay, the Pope represents Janus, duality. And again, the twins, one of the twins, the Metcalf twins, died on April 2nd. And you mean to tell me that all of this is not linked? A lot of you may think that this is just too deep, that the WWE and Hollywood and all these people, they don't put that much thought into these things. Well, I beg to differ. I think they are highly thorough in scripting this stuff because they truly believe in the left-hand side. Okay, it just so happens that this particular left-handed narrative, they put a biblical spin on it, which is crazy. Okay, so when you look at this, when you look at all of this and looking at both Pope John Paul I and Pope John Paul II, both of them basically linked to sacrifice. Are they giving us predictive programming of some sort? Let's look at the next slide and see. The current Pope, in case you didn't know, died April 21st, 2025 at the age of 88 years old. That's a video in and of itself. The number 88 and Lionsgate and the whole thing like that. But look at the date that he died. The man died the day after WrestleMania. And you mean to tell me that everything I was saying about John Cena and Paul Heyman, John Paul being linked to the popes, John Paul I and II, that's predictive programming to the death of the current pope, or who was the current pope? You mean to tell me that that's just a coincidence that I'm reaching? You can believe what you want to believe. But again, this is just my critique. Okay, this is my critique. I could be wrong, but to me, this just seems blatant. Okay, so with that, let's actually move forward, and we're gonna go to the scriptures real quick, okay? Because that's gonna basically set the table for our next findings. No pun intended. Okay, let's move forward so you'll see what I'm talking about here. Let's take a look at this. So this is the book of Luke, chapter 22 and verse 14. And it reads, it says, "And when the hour was come, he sat down, and the 12 apostles with him." So what's going on here? Let's look at the next verse. So this is verse 15, and it reads, And he said unto them, with desire, I have desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. Okay, this is during the Passover, in which was known as the Last Supper. Okay, that's what we're reading about. This is the particular story of the Last Supper, which most people are familiar with. Okay. Now, why am I bringing up the Last Supper? Why, Kaniba? What does this have to do with WrestleMania 41? What does the Last Supper have to do with your reaching? Really? Let's look at the next slide. Let's see why I brought up the Last Supper. Let's take a look at this. So here's our next slide. And it reads, John Cena's latest mantra is the last time is now. Look at this information. In English, Cena, the last name Cena, translates to dinner or supper, referring to the evening meal. John Cena's mantra for this WrestleMania 41 and his retirement tour is the last time is now. Correct? His last name means supper. They're subliminally trying to link this to the Last Supper. John Cena's last name literally means supper. His mantra is the last time is now. They're linking this to the Last Supper. Why? Because John Cena is playing a Messiah figure. That's why on Good Friday, he made the statement about knowing he's going to die. Am I reaching? I don't think so. Okay, I told you we was going to get to John Cena's name. I told you this. All you got to do is be patient with me. Y'all thought I was crazy when I said that they are paying close attention to names. This is how meticulous they are in making this storyline, this biblical undertone. This is clear. This is blatant. This is blatantly linked to the Last Supper. John Cena being a Messiah figure. Okay? So now that we see how the WWE is basically trying to mock the scriptures, we have to think about this. Just like they are trying to mock the scriptures, the Most High has a way of mocking Esau and the rest of the nations as well. All these numbers that they're clinging to, specifically the number 17 and the number 47, well, we're going to deal with that, because little do they know that it's really to their own destruction. Okay, so since these two numbers have really been a thing, we're going to go to some key verses in the Bible dealing with those numbers and really how they apply to the destruction of this place, America. Okay, so let's go to our next slide and let's begin, shall we? So here is the next slide, and it reads, this has been a thing since last year's WrestleMania. Number 17, the eagle, and the number 47. So what is the biblical message here? Okay, what is the actual biblical message here? Could there be an underlining biblical message concerning America dealing with this recent WrestleMania 41? Well, let's get into it. Let's see if the joke or the mockery is really on them. All right, let's get into it. So since the number 47 has been a thing pretty much since last year's WrestleMania 40, how about we go to Isaiah chapter 47 and let's see what it actually says about America. Because as we know, both John Cena and Cody Rhodes are basically symbolic of America because they're both linked to the eagle. Okay, so let's read. This is Isaiah chapter 47 and verse 1, and it reads, it says, "Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground." So what is this talking about? This is talking about America. America is that virgin daughter of Babylon. Okay, when we get to the book of Revelation here in a second, America is referred to as Babylon the Great. Okay, it's the same place. Okay, so America is being told to come sit down in the ground, sit down in the dust. So this is letting you know that America right now is in a high position. It's really in the highest position as far as nations go. Okay, but the Most High is telling America to come down because they're in a high place, to come down and sit in the ground. Okay, they're going to be brought down to a low estate, really the lowest estate in the very near future. Okay, it says there is no throne. Okay, because when you go to Revelation, I believe the 18th chapter, America is described as this prideful nation, and the mindset is I sit as a queen. When you actually read Revelation chapter 11, that's why here it's saying there is no throne. Okay, because they're about to be brought down to a low estate. Okay, it goes on to say, "O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate." Because again, like I just referenced in the book of Revelation, the 18th chapter, America has this mind frame of I sit a queen, or I sit as a queen. Queens are usually viewed as tender and delicate, but it's about to be revealed that America is actually the opposite of that. It's actually being revealed right now as we speak. Okay, when you look at how Donald Trump is dealing with all these different nations and how he's enforcing all these different tariffs and things of that nature, that he's showing, America is showing its true colors, and other nations, they're really starting to see America for what it is. Okay, and remember, this is Isaiah chapter 47. That's why this number has been a theme in this whole Wrestlemania storyline. Okay, so now let's move on to the next verse. This is verse 2, and it reads, it says, "Take the millstone and grind meal, uncover thy locks, make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers." So you gotta think about this. What does all of this mean? Okay, especially the part about America making bare the leg, uncovering the thigh, passing over the rivers. You got to understand, in verse 1, America was basically personified as a virgin daughter. Okay, so America is basically personified as a woman, right? So in the end of verse 2, America is being told to pass over the rivers, right? I want you to think about back in the olden days when really the only thing the women wore were dresses, right? when a woman was wearing a dress and she had to pass through like high waters, what did she typically do? She had to hold her dress up, which does what? It exposes her legs. Okay, just think about it. That's why I'm saying make bare the leg and uncover the thigh, so to pass over the rivers. The rivers in this particular verse metaphorically represent all the other nations. Okay, so this verse is basically saying that America's shame is about to be exposed to all the other nations. Okay, when you read in the book of Revelation, I'm jumping the gun. I'm not gonna say what chapter, but when you read in the book of Revelation, the other nations are basically metaphorically referred to as all the different waters. Okay, so the rivers in this verse is talking about all the other nations, and America exposing its leg and its thigh, meaning it's lifting up its skirt. America's shame is about to be exposed to all the other nations. That's what this is going into. America is about to show its true colors. How does this go into WrestleMania? Well, when you look at Mr. John Cena, whom the number 47 is connected to him, what has he been doing? He basically turned on the WWE universe, showing his true colors. That's why this number 47, I told you, the Most High, and this is my critique, but the Most High has a way of making a mockery of them. You want to be connected to the number 47? Okay, you got it. This is what's coming to America. Okay, let's look at the next verse. This is verse 3, and it reads, "Thy nakedness shall be uncovered." Is that not what I just said? Thy nakedness shall be uncovered. Yea, thy shame shall be seen. Shall be seen by whom? All the other nations. Okay, that's why I said the rivers in verse 2 represent all the other nations. Everybody's gonna see America's shame. America is being exposed. Okay, its true colors is gonna be seen. Okay, let's actually read that again. It says, "Thy nakedness shall be uncovered. Yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance." Allow me to repeat that part. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. Because again, you got to understand, the way the Most High is going to go to war with them, he's not meeting them as a man. It's not a regular war. Okay. First of all, America is going to be destroyed by all the other nations and its allies. Okay. And when the Most High Yahweh sends his son back, Yahweh Shai, he's coming with spiritual power. Okay. No guns, no missiles. Okay. Yahweh Shai and the angels don't need that. They're coming back with spiritual power. Yahweh Shai is coming back in his glory. Okay, but this is the future of America. Okay, vengeance. Okay, America's going to be exposed, and vengeance is going to be taken upon America. Okay, now for those of you who still don't believe me and don't believe that, again, John Cena is linked to America and the number 47, we already proved he's linked to the number 47. And we see in Isaiah chapter 47, this is clearly about America's judgment. Okay, so is John Cena really linked to America? Well, let's just simply take a quick look at his Instagram account. Then we're going to come right back to the scriptures. Let's take a look at his Instagram account. Watch this. Now, this is his Instagram account. Now, what we want to do is put our focus on his profile picture. What does that say? And the words there What does that say? If you can't see it, I'll zoom in a bit. Watch this. What does that say? It says, "We are America." Okay, hashtag "We are America." Right? And that's John Cena with the square around him. Basically, and this is really diabolical. So he's basically telling you that he's been put in a box. They put him in a box. Okay, there's a particular character that he has to play. This is the box they put him in. Okay, but he represents America when you look at this thing spiritually. That's why he's linked to the eagle. He did that. He has this whole series called The Peacemaker where he's basically tethered to his pet eagle because he represents America. Same way Cody Rhodes does in a way, but really more so John Cena. Okay, so now that we've dealt with that, let's get back to the scriptures and let's deal with the number 17. Okay, let's take a look. So now we're going to the book of Revelation. Now we know the book of Revelation was written by whom? John the Revelator. John. It was written by John. Okay. And of course, this is centered around who? John Cena. Okay. So this is the book of Revelation, chapter 17. And we're going to start with verse 16. And why is that? Well, John Cena was a 16-time champion, going for his 17th world title, right? So let's look at Revelation chapter 17 and verse 16. And let's simply see what it says. And it reads, it says, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her naked, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire." What is this talking about? Okay, the 10 horns which was upon the beast, those 10 horns are actually going into America's allies, NATO. Okay, it originally started off with basically 10 nations. Okay, but yeah, the 10 horns is dealing with NATO. Okay, and the 10 horns are going to hate the whore. The whore in this particular verse is talking about America. Yes, it is. Okay. Remember we read in Isaiah 47 where America was personified as a virgin daughter, but then that virgin daughter got exposed. Her nakedness got exposed. Yeah, that's why here she's being referred to as a whore. She tried to put on this front, this persona as this chaste virgin daughter, when in reality she's a whore. This is America. Now America's allies are going to hate it. Okay, the 10 horns are going to hate the whore. Eventually America's allies is going to turn on America and burn America with fire, aka missiles. America is going to be destroyed. And it just so happens this is in the book of Revelation, chapter 17 and verse 16. Right? Now, if that's not enough, let's put the icing on the cake. Let's look at the next verse. This is Revelation chapter 17 and verse 17. And it reads, it says, "For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled." So it was a specific appointed amount of time that they were meant to be allies with America up until a certain point, to the point where they were supposed to they are going to destroy America or take part in the destruction of America, because it won't just be America's allies. Okay, you better believe it's going to be Russia and Russia's allies as well that's going to send missiles over here. Okay, that's why the Bible it refers to America as a lake of fire. All these other nations is going to turn this place into a lake of fire. Okay, but as we see here in Revelation chapter 17 and verse 17, that all of this is the will of the Most High. The joke, the mockery, the joke is really on them. Okay? But anyway, that is going to be the end of this video. And of course, the title of this video is Wrestlemania 41. The Last Time Is Now, Part 4. And of course, this is going to bring us to the end of this particular video series. Okay. I want to thank all of you who actually tuned in and watched this whole series. I know it was long, but it was a lot to go over. Okay. And I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay. Like I said, I'm glad that I waited to do part 4. I didn't do it prematurely. Had I put it out before WrestleMania, I would have missed a lot. Okay, but I really enjoyed doing this particular video series. I always love doing these types of videos, and I look forward to doing more. But of course, this was my critique on WrestleMania and basically looking at it from a spiritual vantage point. Okay. So with that, and as always, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High Yahweh, which is the name of the Heavenly Father. And I do so by Hashem, which means in the name of Yahweh Shai, which is the name of the only begotten Son of the Heavenly Father, whom the world knows as Jesus Christ. And I want to thank all you brothers and sisters for tuning in. I hope this video was informative and edifying. And until next time, Shalom, family.